Grandmaster Flash. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. Our guest for the hour, Michael Moore, Academy Award-winning filmmaker, activist. His new book, Here Comes Trouble, Stories from My Life. Now, your book really sort of more ends with Roger and Me, but we're going to go to just a bit of the trailer from Michael Moore's first film.
Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Is this on? Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
We're rolling.
Hi, I'm Michael Moore. In my hometown of Flint, Michigan, General Motors closed the factories and put 30,000 people out of work. To raise their spirits, I made this movie. And went off to find GM Chairman Roger Smith to get some answers. Boy, was he hard to get to.
We're going to have to ask you to leave the club.
You want me to call Roger Smith?
Let's all Flint.
Call General Motors. I really don't know.
I don't think we've met.
Do you have an appointment?
Mr. Smith is not in. I don't understand.
Would you mind leaving?
So while looking for Roger, I got to know some of the people in my hometown a bit better. Like Deputy Fred.
I treat a person the way I would like to be treated. Sheriff's Department.
And I met a neighbor or two.
I was color analyzed by someone in the IMS line who are the people who taught me to do colors, and I've discovered that I am another season.
Talked to a PR guy at GM.
Because a guy is an automobile executive does not make him inhuman. I've talked to enough of them, I know what their concerns are.
I met some celebrities.
I was born here in Flint, but I don't know anything about it.
And kept trying to find Roger. Roger wasn't talking, but the critics wouldn't keep quiet.
Roger and Me, selected as one of the year's 10 best by the New York Times. Judith Crist, Siskel and Ebert.
This guy, out.
The New York Post, Cosmopolitan Magazine, Gannett News Service, the Seattle Times, the Baltimore Sun, Jeffrey Lyons Sneak Previews, the Toronto Globe and Mail, Rolling Stone, and more.
So Roger, if you're out there, listen to the critics. See this movie. Thousands have. You'll enjoy it. After all, I made you a star.
The trailer for Roger and Me, where Here Comes Trouble ends. Roger and Me. The importance of this. In fact, right before, as you were making Roger and Me, Michael Moore, our guest for the hour, Michael, I went with you and a few other people to the occupied territories. We were covering Gaza, West Bank, Israel, and you were talking about making this film and trying to collect your pennies to be able to see films in between, movies in between, so that you just didn't sit in your living room with your Avid editing this.
Yeah, there was no Avid then. It was a actual Steenbeck editing machine where you edited film. And you're right. I knew you back then, and I didn't know at the time really that this would become that. I really was just upset at what had happened in my hometown, and I wanted to really kind of show people what happens when a corporation dominates in that fashion and controls people's lives on that level. So yeah, so while I was making it and we were traveling, which actually I wrote a story about our trip there to the West Bank and Gaza, and I that and a few other stories didn't make this cut because that just started to become like its own book. I mean, there were that and subsequent trips to Israel and the occupied territories. It just
in fact, didn't you flash to it at the end of Roger and Me?
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Because and we all thought that would be your next film.
Yes. Well, I think I said at the time that the next film was going to be called West Bank Story, and it was going to be sort of a cowboys and Indians thing. But yeah, it's that film really hasn't. That's a film that's still to be made. Actually, sad to say, isn't it, that this is now 20-some years later. You and I were there during really what was about the first month or two of the first Intifada, and I just couldn't believe it. You know, I mean, I traveled to many parts of the world by then, but the kind of enforced poverty and the conditions of people, what they were forced to live in, especially in Gaza, was just I'd never seen anything like it. It really affected me on a profound level. Just before Roger and Me, you went to a trip in Acapulco. Talk about it. Yes, I was again without a job. I was on unemployment, and I was in the bookstore and picked up a magazine and saw this ad from the U.S. Department of Commerce that they were having a confab for business owners in Acapulco to help them essentially move their businesses from the U.S. to Mexico. And I just thought that's an odd way to spend tax dollars. And so I spoke to some friends who worked with Ralph Nader there at the time about this, and they have a magazine, still do have a magazine called Multinational Monitor. And they said, well, if you want to go down there, you know, we'll pay for the trip, and you can write the story for us. And so I did. I made up a pretend business. I bought a businessman's suit that would look appropriate in Acapulco, some kind of yellow seersucker thing. I cut my hair and tried to look as corporate as possible, and actually pulled it off and was there for this entire conference where I got to witness something I didn't really think it was going to be what it was, and it was essentially, this is how we're going to destroy the American dream. This is how we're going to destroy the middle class, and we, the Reagan administration at the time, we're going to help you do this. And so it's all these CEOs or heads of either large companies or they were small companies like auto suppliers, and they were getting a whole lesson in how to screw the workers here and exploit the workers in Mexico. And I'm sitting there taking notes and hoping I don't get discovered. And I always felt it was not a compliment to me that I pulled it off so well, that I actually did look like the CEO of some company that I had made up.
Wasn't one of the people there then in the Obama administration today?
Yes, Jim Colby, who was a Republican congressman from Arizona, he was asked to speak at one of the dinners, and he came down there and talked about how great it was, and they all started to chant Jim Colby for president, and he was one of the key congressmen behind moving these jobs to the Mexican border. And he was saying things like, now I can't remember, this is 1986, so he's saying things like, you know, in 10 years, you know, these Mexican towns are going to look like the suburbs of Chicago. Of course, here we are 20 years later. I don't think anybody wants to take a trip through the suburbs of Chicago, whatever you want to call it. I mean, we all know the truth that standard of life living in Mexico never really was. It was all part of the ruse, you know. But he then, President Obama, when he became president, he appointed him as one of his trade people. And I remember when that happened, I just thought, geez, this is the same guy that I saw at this private meeting of corporate dudes who was trying to help them throw people out of work in this country. And now he's in the Obama administration. It was really kind of a... Of course, listen, I mean, after the appointment of Timothy Geithner and Larry Summers, I wasn't that surprised, because it was clear from Obama's first or second month that he was not the same person that maybe we'd voted for.
I wanted to go to that clip you mentioned, Ralph Nader, in 2004, when you went on Bended Knee on the Bill Maher show.
Oh, yes.
And you pleaded with Ralph Nader. Okay, there you go. You're pleading with Ralph Nader not to run.
In 2004, yeah.
This is 2004.
Yeah,
this is right after the Iraq War.
Yeah.
Talk about where we were then and where we are today, the whole trajectory.
Well, of course, I was a very big Nader supporter and traveled the country with him in 2000. But all with the promise from him that he was not going to push it in the swing states, that he was really going to try and get his votes from places like New York and Texas, places where it was already sort of decided who would win. And then he started to campaign in the swing states. He was upset at Al Gore because Al Gore had wrongly kept Ralph out of the debates, and so the focus became Al Gore, and the bigger picture, I think, in my opinion, got lost. So by the time 2004 came around, and we're in the first year of this war, Bush had to go. I mean, there was just no messing around.
Well, at this point. Let's go back to the time when you felt so deeply about this. Actually, before 2004. Let's go to 2003. Let's go to that night in March at the Oscars.
5 days into the war.
And the Oscar goes to... Bowling for Columbine, Michael Moore and Michael Donovan.
On behalf of our producers, Kathleen Glynn and Michael Donovan from Canada, I'd like to thank the Academy for this. I've invited my fellow documentary nominees on the stage with us, and we would like to, they are here in solidarity with me because we like nonfiction. We like nonfiction, and we live in fictitious times. We live in a time where we have fictitious election results that elects a fictitious president. We live in a time where we have a man sending us to war for fictitious reasons, whether it's the fictition of duct tape or the fictitious of orange alerts. We are against this war, Mr. Bush. Shame on you, Mr. Bush. Shame on you. And anytime you've got the Pope and the Dixie Chicks against you, your time is up. Thank you very much.
And the music swelled. Michael Moore, 5 days into the Iraq War, winning the Academy Award for Bowling for Columbine. Michael, when I was coming up this morning, I was in the elevator with a man, and there was another man, and then someone hit a button, but that one of those men did not get off, and he's coming up to our floor, and I'm thinking, I wonder who he is. And then I saw the Secret Service-like earpiece, and that relates to what happened after this. Talk about your life after getting the Academy Award.
Well, starting backstage where people were wanting to punch me for what I said, it escalated over a series of months, from threats to attempted assaults to actual physical assaults, to where I literally couldn't walk down the street without somebody trying to hit me, punch me. One guy in Fort Lauderdale took the lid off his coffee and threw it in my face. And I think one time I was here, actually, when you opened your studios, and I told some of those stories for the very first time to you. This was, when was this, about a year or so ago? And I had never really, I've been told not to speak about this stuff, especially because some of this, which led all the way up to somebody planning to blow up our house, and who was caught with the bomb-making materials and everything because his AK-47 accidentally went off. And the police then discovered that he was intending to kill me and a number of other liberals. When I told those stories on your show that night, not knowing actually, I thought it was just we have an opening reception here for your studio. I didn't realize it was going to be on the air like a few days later, and I'm thinking, oh my God. But then people...
You record school board meetings, we record receptions.
Yeah, I get that, yes. If you enter here, it shall be broadcast. But you know what happened was that the response I got from people, it was like, oh, you know what, maybe I should tell these stories. And it really inspired me to sort of start the book by laying out the sort of 7 years of what I've had to live under and what I've had to live with. And you mentioned the guy in the elevator. At a certain point there in 03 and 04, the studio at the time, who was releasing Fahrenheit 9/11, had to hire ex-Navy SEALs and Army Rangers to protect me. It was just a crazy, horrible way to have to live. To this day, when I appear in public, or if you know, there has to be this kind of security in the places I go to speak. I'll almost demand it, because every time they announce if Michael Moore's coming, they get those phone calls. So it's not the way anybody would want to live.
What do they say? There's many death threats against President Bush as against you.
Yes, the person who's hired by the administration to consult with the Secret Service said that there's George W. Bush and then there's you in terms of number of actual threats. And there was a file of over 400 people that actually made or had tried to act upon these threats with me. So, so it's a lousy way to have to live. I don't like it, but I don't stop what I'm doing because of it, because then the terrorists win, right?
Well, we have to end right here, but we're going to do part 2 after. We're going to put it online at democracynow.org. Michael Moore is going to be in New York at St. Mark's Bookstore, hoping to save it on Thursday night, and then on to Washington. We'll talk about that in a minute. His new book is Here Comes Trouble, Stories from My Life. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks so much for joining us.